Committee members, we are going to be pursuant to Standing Order 102. We are still studying the economic stimulus package, and we have witnesses before us. Treasury Board Secretariat, we have Madame Michelle Doré, Secretary to the Treasury Board, and Alistair Smith. And from the Infrastructure Canada, silence, s'il vous plaît. Merci.
Silence, please.
Madame Baltachoglu, Deputy Minister, and Mr. Forrester. And I believe you have opening remarks, so Madame Doré. Yes. Yes, Mr. Walkerton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think most of us had planned to come to this committee meeting this afternoon with the expectation that the Parliamentary Budget Officer would be attending.
Yes.
We saw a change of meeting this morning, which just had no clarification or reasoning as to why he was not appearing. I'm wondering if you could kind of give us an update as to what's gone on and what exactly.
The Parliamentary Budget Officer had indicated that he would be able to come, but then he had some change in plans. The government was supplying him with information, and he advised us that he would like to come to another meeting where he can give us a proper analysis of the figures that the government is providing him with a progress report. So we agreed that if he can't add value and he wants to review the information that's going to be given to him this afternoon, that he can, and I guess Madame Fairholt-Findlay was the one that really wanted him to come, and we agreed that if he does not have the relevant information and he really felt that he would be not adding value, he can, if he wants, come back and as soon as he has got the information from the government.
Yeah, Madam Chair, there was no dialogue with other committee members, and this raises the point that I think committee members have had and expressed to you as chair in terms of making determinations about where and when the committee will undertake certain discussions with witnesses. Considering the fact that this was, and this is our last planned meeting on this issue, we won't have an opportunity to hear from the Parliamentary Budget Officer. Now, I, for one, would like to hear what he has to say. So I'm wondering if we could postpone this meeting for another date when he would be available, so that he might be able to bring forward his testimony alongside the witnesses that we had planned for this meeting.
Yeah. And you have a very valid point, Mr. Walkerton, the issue being that he had nothing to add. The report that was given to him, the 4,500 pages that came
Madam
to him.
Chair, we don't. Let me finish. Madam Chair, we
let
don't.
me finish. I'm sorry. I gave you the opportunity.
Witnesses.
I gave you the opportunity to finish. So bear with me. He was given the information by pages, boxes, till we brought in a motion, and then he got 4,500 electronic version that he has looked at it. He has not been able to analyze. He claims it's administrative, and he telephoned, in fact, yesterday night and wanted to know what he could do because he really didn't have much information to go by. And he suggested that since we have very senior people here who know what they are talking about, that he be excused. And we agreed. I mean, I had to take a decision immediately that if we wanted him to be excused, that we could. And we said, fair enough, we have senior people who have information, and I understand that Madame Baltachoglu might be able to just fulfill our requirements, and maybe we might not need the Parliamentary Budget Officer.
In no committee have we ever, that I've attended, have we ever let the witness that's being requested or called to determine as to if or not they would be of use to our committee. It's always been a determination of committee members in consultation with one another as to who we would like to call and which dates we will call them.
And thank you, Mr. Walkerton. And I don't want to further any discussion on it. What he would like is he's proposing that we postpone this meeting, and I'd like to take a vote on it and proceed with our witnesses. Those in favor of Mr. Walkerton's suggestion that we postpone the meeting and let the witnesses come back the next time when the Parliamentary Budget Officer can come back again and give us the information that the very able deputy ministers can give us, Yes, Madam Paul Finlay.
I actually would like to respond to Mr. Workington in that we had actually expected at this point to have the information that was given to the Parliamentary Budget Officer with which we could ask him specific questions. As Mr. Workington knows, that has been denied due to concerns about translation, even though we said we would be more than welcome to take the document in its form. Having not been able to look at that, that also hampers our ability to ask effective questions of the Parliamentary Budget Officer. We have four excellent witnesses here today who I am sure have come ready to answer our questions. We would be more than happy to have another meeting, because today was not effective with the Parliamentary Budget Officer, to have him, but I feel very strongly that we have imposed on these people and they have information to provide us today. I would very much like to make sure we have that opportunity, and I would encourage a further meeting with the Parliamentary Budget Officer when he in fact has effective information for us.
Thank you. I do not want any further discussion because Madame Doré has to leave in an hour. So I will now come to what Mr. Walkerton has suggested. Does the committee wish this committee to adjourn for a postpone for another day when the witnesses may not be, the other witnesses that are here may not be able to come, and wait for the Parliamentary Budget Officer whose work was delayed by the government? Then the work was delayed by this committee not allowing its members to review what was given to the Parliamentary Budget Officer by the governing party. They claimed that we had to have it translated. And Madame Beltajuk has a reason for the translation that she would like to give as well. So if I would like to take a vote and move. I do not want anybody
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Delaying the. I have a vote, and that is what I will go with.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Holder.
Thank you very much. What I've always appreciated is, with chairs of committee, is the balanced way they presume a question. And I can't help but think the way that you've positioned the question to the committee by virtue of their potential inaccessibility, I think presupposes a response that they would not be available. And I think we made a particularly strong fuss, it seems to me, by members opposite not so long ago when we had transport officials present, including two ministers, and there was some question of timing, and we got into some really ridiculous wrangling, quite frankly. But members opposite made it really clear at that time, Madam Chair, that they had intended to hear specifically the people who they'd anticipated that they would hear. Now it seems there just seems to be an inconsistency in the logic that I'm trying to understand. And then separately, it seemed, Chair, through you, that you biased the question to the committee the way that you positioned it by suggesting their inavailability. And I would respectfully ask you to, when you pose questions of this nature, remove the bias out of that, if you would, please. Respectfully.
I'm respecting the. Actually, the deputy ministers are extremely busy. Madame Doré has to go to a parliamentary committee, a Treasury Board committee, and that is why I'm respecting their time availability, and that's why I'm going to call the question to vote. The people who wish this committee to be postponed and call the witnesses for another day when the budget officer may receive his information, because the budget officer has still not received the project update according to him, and get everyone back. Those in favor of postponing the committee, please raise your hands. Those opposed? I break the tie. We proceed. Madame Doré, with your opening remarks, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you've indicated, and as I believe my office has indicated to the clerk of the committee, I am going to have to leave at 4:30, but as I also indicated to you, I and my colleague will have to leave at 4:30. But as I also indicated to you, I will no doubt be back before the committee on December 3rd when we appear before this committee with my minister on the supplementary estimates for the Treasury Board Secretariat. So if there are other issues or questions that cannot be addressed within this time frame, I'd be happy to address them at that opportunity as well. And I understand that I am here today as a follow-up to my November 3rd appearance before this committee when I appeared excuse me, with the Clerk of the Privy Council. And accompanying me today is Mr. Alistair Smith, Assistant Secretary, Expenditure Management Secretary of the Treasury Board Secretariat. In addition, I would say further to my November 3rd appearance, I believe the Department forwarded to the Clerk of the Committee the information the Committee had requested on the Government of Canada's communications and Federal Identity Program policies, as well as related information to the Expenditure Action Plan. And it is my understanding that members had additional questions about communications planning, particularly coordination of communications on initiatives that cut across more than one department, and that some of these questions arose as a result of Mr. Kennedy's appearance before the committee last week. So I thought it would be of interest to the committee if I did a brief recap of the roles and responsibilities under the Government of Canada's communications policy. And I'll start with Cabinet, which, supported by designated Cabinet committees, sets and monitors the government's strategic communications direction and provides day-to-day coordination for the implementation of the government's agenda. It ensures that emerging issues are managed effectively throughout the government and acts as the gatekeeper for policy and legislative proposals. It sets policy direction and funding allocations required for Treasury Board to release funds for advertising contracts based on the government advertising plan. Turning now to ministers. Ministers, both individually and collectively as members of Cabinet, are the principal spokespersons for the Government of Canada and its institutions. It is their role to provide leadership in establishing the priorities and overall themes of government communications, and specifically, ministers determine, together with their respective deputy heads, their communication priorities, objectives, and requirements. They approve the corporate communications plans of the institutions they head. They define the responsibilities of ministerial staff with respect to communications and establish, together with their deputy heads, effective liaison between ministerial staff and institutional heads of communications to ensure that the communications of policy and operational initiatives is coordinated with particular attention to media relations and participation in public events and announcements. The Privy Council Office, my colleagues who appeared before you with me on November 3rd and subsequently, Privy Council Office coordinates and manages government communications as determined by the Prime Minister and Cabinet, and it is responsible for advising Cabinet and its committees, as well as the Privy Council Office senior management and institutions across the government on communication issues, themes, and strategies, supporting and monitoring the implementation of Cabinet decisions across government, particularly with respect to communications, collecting and analyzing information on the public environment in order to advise the Prime Minister, ministers, and institutions on the management of public issues, and coordinating and supporting the planning of horizontal or government-wide communications by designating lead institutions and assigning special responsibilities, and developing and monitoring the government advertising plan and recommending funding allocations under that plan to Cabinet or its designated committee. For its part, the Treasury Board of Canada is responsible for approving and promulgating general administrative policy for the Government of Canada in accordance with the Financial Administration Act, and the Government of Canada's communications policy is a good example of such administrative policy. The Secretariat advises and supports the Board and its President in the development, management, and evaluation of those policies, and in that capacity, the Secretariat is key responsibilities for the communications policy, which include developing and evaluating the policy itself, advising institutions on policy interpretation and application, monitoring policy implementation and compliance, advising on the allocation management of funds for government advertising, which the Privy Council Office coordinates, and assessing, advising on, and processing Treasury Board submissions from institutions to release funding for approved advertising initiatives, assessing performance and results and ensuring effective resource and expenditure management related to the communications function, and directing, coordinating, and monitoring implementation of the Federal Identity Program. Deputy heads lead and are responsible for the overall management of communications and its integration with other key functions, particularly policy and program management, and they champion an institution's internal communications. Deputy heads are accountable to their ministers for ensuring the government's communication priorities and requirements are met. The Clerk of the Privy Council for ensuring that their institutions' communications fully reflect government-wide policies, themes and priorities, and that the communications function is fully integrated into the planning, management, and evaluation of policies, programs, services, and initiatives. And the Secretary of the Treasury Board for implementing this policy within their institutions and for carrying out related directives, instructions, or administrative procedures that the Secretary may issue from time to time. Deputy heads must ensure that any instructions issued by the Clerk of the Privy Council and all relevant Cabinet decisions concerning communication priorities of the government are fully implemented. And deputy heads must ensure that the requirements of the communications policy of the Government of Canada are fulfilled in all operations of the institutions they lead, both within Canada and abroad. And this includes ensuring that institutions manage both internal and external communications according to the values and principles expressed in the policy. Et dans mon témoignage du
In my November 3rd testimony, in response to a question from Madame Bourgeois about whether there is a government-wide planning process for communications, I said that, and I quote, "It is up to each department to establish a communications plan or a communications strategy. That Treasury Board does not have a communication plan except for its own department, and that most of the communications initiatives form an integral part of the initiatives of the programs of every department and agency. This applies to the vast majority of communications initiatives in government. A certain level of coordination is usually put in place where an initiative cuts across more than one department and requires a coordinated approach from a communications perspective." When I stated at the same meeting that there is no pan-governmental planning, I was referring to advertising in general. Communications planning for the Economic Action Plan is an example of an initiative that cuts across multiple departments, obviously, and as a result, it is coordinated, which my colleague from Privy Council had indicated and demonstrated with the communications material he referred to. In his opening remarks at the November 3rd meeting of your committee, the Clerk of the Privy Council spoke on this issue. He stated that the Privy Council Office, and in particular Mr. Kennedy, Deputy Secretary to the Cabinet Plans and Consultations, is, and I quote, "responsible for managing the overall communications of the Economic Action Plan." He went on to talk about two elements of communications planning for the Economic Action Plan, the Economic Action Plan website, and advertising. Madam Chair, I trust I have clarified the roles and responsibilities for communications planning in the Government of Canada for initiatives that are within a single organization, as well as for initiatives that cut across several departments. I will be happy to respond to any questions you may have on this topic. Thank you.
Madame Baltachulu.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. I have with me John Forster, who is our Associate Deputy Minister of Infrastructure. Nous sommes ravis d'être ici aujourd'hui.
We are very pleased to be here today to update you on Infrastructure Canada's work in implementing the Government of Canada's Economic Action Plan.
Government tabled its Economic Action Plan. At that time, Infrastructure Canada was charged with two important responsibilities. First, to accelerate the government's Building Canada infrastructure plan, and second, to design and deliver 5 of the more than 20 new infrastructure initiatives in the budget as approved by Parliament. Depuis les 10 derniers
In the past 10 months, my department has been focused on delivering this challenging agenda for Canadians.
A few moments to talk about our progress and the measures the department has put in place to ensure the accountable stewardship of taxpayers' funds. While I appreciate that much of the focus has been on new funds, we cannot overlook the steps taken to accelerate our existing programs, specifically the Building Canada plan. This plan was originally designed to provide $33 billion over 7 years to 2014. In the past 10 months, Infrastructure Canada has announced funding for 88 major projects worth $9.6 billion, transferred $500 million to provinces and territories for their core infrastructure projects, and approved the entire program for small communities, about $1 billion, for almost 800 projects in all 10 provinces. De plus, infrastructure.
Second, Infrastructure Canada has designed and launched new infrastructure funds announced in the budget.
The Minister, Minister Baird, has signed agreements with every province and territory who have committed matching funds of their own to infrastructure stimulus funds. Committed more than $3.3 billion of this $4 billion fund, approved over 3,000 projects across the country allowing work to begin, approved $500 million top-up for small communities in 9 of 10 provinces. Through all this activity, the Department's focus has been on effective and efficient program delivery. Notre but était de trouver.
Our goal was to balance speed with accountability as well as stewardship.
Infrastructure Canada's goal was to balance speed with accountability and stewardship. Madam Chairman, while much work remains to be done, the Department has made good progress in achieving this goal. The Department has streamlined the administrative and approval processes to allow work to begin sooner. Le ministère a conçu.
The Department developed an innovative online application form and review process.
Legislation and change regulations to streamline environmental assessments to avoid duplication while protecting environment. The Department contributed to the government's overall efforts. And Infrastructure Canada has not done this alone. Infrastructure Canada has built a truly impressive national partnership with 2 other levels of government. Provinces, territories, and municipalities play key role in this partnership. They provide matching funding to increase the number of projects that can be built. They review and approve the projects with us. They contract, manage, and oversee the construction of projects on the ground. And they provide additional accountability to their citizens and taxpayers. The Government of Canada is responsible for reviewing and approving the project with our partners as well, and our department monitors progress. And Infrastructure Canada pays our share of the costs as construction proceeds based on claims submitted by the provinces and territories. This is a very important point. Under our stimulus funds, the department reimburses the claims as construction proceeds. Through signed contribution agreements, the Department has provided advances to each province and territory. As construction on projects proceeds and milestones are reached, provinces and territories can submit claims, and the federal government pays its share. This is exactly what Canadians do when they are renovating their homes. They do not pay 100% upfront before any work is done. They pay a deposit or an advance. Then, as the construction proceeds, they pay the money for the work that is done. In some cases, this means the Department may not see a claim for work that began this year until later this year or even next year. This is not a reflection of inactivity. Instead, it is simply how these programs work in our agreements signed with the provinces and municipalities. It is also an important part of protecting taxpayers by ensuring the Government of Canada is paying for results achieved and delivered. And once the Department receives complete and accurate claims, we have financial controls in place to review it. Upon approval, Infrastructure pays the claims within 30 days.
The There is one last thing I would like to touch on. Infrastructure Canada was tasked with a very important mandate that it takes very seriously, and it has put in place important measures to deliver on it.
Capacity has been strengthened by the appointment of my colleague, John Forster, as the dedicated Associate Deputy Minister for Infrastructure Canada. The department has created and staffed a separate team responsible for infrastructure stimulus fund administration. This department has strengthened its audit team. Infrastructure Canada has created an external audit committee and it has started out its operations, and the committee has been briefed on all our programs and, most importantly, regarding economic action plan. Infrastructure Canada has bolstered its capacity on environmental assessments. The department has strengthened its human resources management team, and we have improved the monitoring of our staffing processes. Infrastructure
Canada has built effective partnerships with other departments, such as the regional development agencies, who manage and deliver some of the department's infrastructure programs on the ground.
Responsible for Infrastructure Canada, I have been very pleased with the dedication and the level of effort in the department to deliver on the government's prior agenda. Much work remains to be done, and I will continue to seek ways to improve our implementation. In closing, over the last 10 months, Infrastructure Canada has developed a national partnership that is leveraging billions of dollars in infrastructure funding, contributed to start of thousands of important projects across the country, and most importantly, put measures in place ensure that the department could deliver quickly on the agenda while being accountable to Canadian taxpayers. Thank you again, Madam Chairman, for inviting us. We're very pleased to be here, and hopefully we'll answer all your questions.
Thank you very much. We'll start with the first round of questions. 8 minutes. Madam Hall-Finley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much, everyone, for being here. And my questions first are for Madame Doré because of the time constraints that you have. I do appreciate you being here. And I want to thank you also for your detailed description of who is responsible for what with the communications policy, the federal identity program. That's very helpful. So thank you for that. I do have a couple of questions. We have had concerns about, and being completely upfront, we have had some significant concerns about some of the advertising content looking and feeling a great deal like certain aspects of the Conservative Party. We've had examples of website colors, for example, not only being blue, but out of a million possible choices, the exact same pigment as that used by the Conservative Party. We are worried about phrases such as Harper government, which appears over 9,000 times in government websites. And having reviewed the communications policy and the FIP, there's nothing in there that suggests the name of the Prime Minister with government is a Canadian symbol the way Government of Canada is. And so, two questions. The decisions on things like that exact pigment of blue for the websites being exactly the same as that of the Conservative Party, the use of the phrase Harper government, the decision to have photos galore of the Prime Minister and cabinet ministers, including playing the piano. Those decisions, I take it from your description, would come either from Cabinet or from Cabinet with the approval or direction of the PCO. Is that correct?
In many of those instances, your answer is correct, because there are no prescriptions or there are no elements with regard to which color, which element. The only color elements, if I can put it that way, are prescribed in terms of the federal identity program with the official symbols per se. So it really is the choice as of either ministers or cabinet with regard to what the elements are. It is not an element that is governed by or prescribed by or prevented, if I can put it that way. There are no prescriptions for or against the specific use of colors or phrases or elements.
Well, and this is where I become a little bit confused, because in reading the policy and the FIP, it certainly seems to me that although it doesn't exclude certain things, by including certain things, without a catch-all saying, oh, but by the way, anything else will go, there is a certain element of not everything will go in government advertising, that by including reference to Government of Canada symbols and accepted symbols, there is a requirement, I think, there should be. So ultimately, in terms of compliance, so if decisions are made to have a certain branding element to advertising are made by the PCO, by the PMO, in your description here, you do have that the Treasury Board Secretariat does, in fact, it has responsibility for monitoring the policy implementation and compliance. And so can you tell me who in Treasury Board would look at those directions from the PMO, from Cabinet, from PCO, and determine, yes, you have complied with the communications policy, yes, we have decided that the use of X slogan or the use of X color scheme or the use of X number of photos, for example, who is it in Treasury Board that would actually say, yes, this complies with the communications policy? And what criteria would be used? But I'm really trying to focus in on who. And
the reason I gave the roles and responsibilities was also to indicate that in the specific areas or the programs or activities or communications activities, deputy heads are accountable for ensuring that they are compliant with the policy.
Right.
So there is, and in the horizontal communications activities that are undertaken, the Privy Council Office and the Treasury Board Secretariat do engage in I would say, a review of the materials in so much as there is a need to do so. As I indicated in my previous appearance before this committee, the materials with regard to the Economic Action Plan, the advertising is fully compliant with the Government of Canada communications policy, as well as the components with regard to advertising in regard to the specific advertising elements of the EAP.
Well, and with respect, the comment that just because something isn't excluded means that it can be included, our view is that the communications policy, if it in fact allows that level of politicization of an advertising campaign, either the policy is not being complied with in terms of requiring, clear Government of Canada symbols, either the communications policy and the FIP are not really being complied with, or they need a significant tightening up, because there seems to be a great deal of this transfer of Conservative Party look and feel into government advertising. But thank you for that. Quick question for Ms. Baltaccioliu. I appreciate also and appreciate very much the work. We understand that everybody in infrastructure has had to be doing double and triple duty. So understand that and appreciate the workload that you're under. But one of the questions we continue to be asking, and since last spring, is we are still looking for the dollar numbers. Now I notice in the handout you've given out you have a number figure for advances, and then another explanation that the government will pay claims once receiving invoices. No argument with that, although the question of an advance is now new to us. Can you please, just simple dollar figures, can you tell us what those numbers are so far?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for the question, and I appreciate the honourable members seeking clarity, because it is somewhat complicated in the way that the program runs. Madam Chairman, last time we appeared, you asked us for a schematic, so the members have that? Okay, so maybe if I can walk through.
And I hate to interrupt, but we're really very short of time. I understand the schematic. We've actually had that described to us a number of times. My question is not how the process works. My question is, what has the government paid out so far? So dollar figure, what advances have been made, a dollar figure, and what invoices have now been paid, just a dollar amount. so far, given that it is now November 20 whatever?
Thank you. I was just going to point to the schematic in terms of the advance column. We have provided $230 million in advance payments to provinces, territories. This is important because this was done very early on in the process, and it was meant to kickstart the activity. We have received the first batch of claims and status reports from most of the provinces in September, and we're right now getting another batch in November from the provinces again, claims and updates.
If you've only received in September, then
You're finished. I'm so
Okay.
sorry. I was just paying attention. Your time's up.
I don't want to take up too much of your time, but when the claims came in September, and my colleague John Forster can elaborate on it if you would like, we had to make sure that the claim data, because it's online input, was accurate. So it took us a while to look through those claims data, and we have provided this information to the Parliamentary Budget Officer. However, our financial officials haven't gone through the data, and we haven't made any payments on those claims received. So we're going through the data. We would be happy to provide the committee as we process them, because we don't want to give you numbers that is going to mislead you, or actually mislead us as well. We have to make sure that they make sense. We're going through it. Our CFO, our Chief Financial Officer, has yet to go through it, and the payments would be made the moment that the claims are complete. So we're right now ensuring the completeness of the data. The November data we got is way better because it was the second time the claims were coming in. People were used to how to file the documents, etc. So this is best I could give. However, I'd like 1 second to make a very important point. Money being paid by the federal government does not fully reflect, is not the best indicator of economic activity. We have 2,500 projects are underway. This is over $8 billion of activity. And an interesting statistic that you might find it interesting, we believe that out of the projects underway, for about 500, we have gotten no claims, and just looking through the initial data, 50 of the completed projects, we have no claims yet. So the projects have completed, but we don't have the claims to pay them. Okay. But this is, later in the testimony, my colleague John can tell you the whole story around how these programs run, and it's not an abnormal situation. It's actually normal. It just reflects how governments work and how infrastructure is done.
Thank you. We now go to Monsieur Nadeau. 8 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
For 8 minutes, please. Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome to all of you. We are here engaged in a process to better understand the situation with regard to the investments being made at present under the federal government's economic action plan. I'm looking at the numbers that the Library of Parliament provided to us concerning the projects that have been approved, or at least that are being looked at, and that follow-up is coming for. Out of 3,500 projects in the country, more than half of them are in Ontario. Is there a reason for this? Ontario accounts for about a third of Canada, and more than half of the projects are underway with federal contributions that are quite surprising. And this goes for several categories of projects. So Ontario, is it the big winner, or is this going to be readjusted over time? Thank you for the question. I can answer in this way. Under the stimulus fund, the allocation of the funds between the provinces was done under a per capita system precisely. So each province, each territory receives its share of the $4 billion. The situation in Quebec is such that there are a few projects underway under the stimulus fund. For example, we are sharing in the cost of a PRECO program, and Quebec is the maître d'œuvre for this program. Quebec receives the forms and the applications. It reviews the applications. It provides to Canada the names of projects that it wants to support, and we add our approval on top of that. So it's just a matter of a different system. The funds are managed differently, province by province, but the allocation is per capita. So the allocation of the funds is per capita, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the number of projects reflects this allocation, because I presume that some projects are more costly than others. So please enlighten me in this regard. That's exactly the case. It depends on the program itself in each province. For example, in Newfoundland, we have a few large projects for water treatment plants, for example. In other provinces, there may be more projects put forward by the province itself. For example, in Quebec, there are more road construction projects. And the organization is different. It's not municipal, it's provincial. Overall, those projects are larger than municipal type projects. So the number of projects is just a reflection of the programs, and they vary from province to province. Because you're saying that it's per capita, so it's per resident. Is that how you calculate it? Yes, precisely. The numbers that we've seen,
final.
Are these final numbers? It seems to me that about 3/4 of the $4 billion have been expended. There'd still be about $1 billion left over available. Is that the case? $3.3 billion out of the $4 billion have been committed. I'm not talking about expended, but committed. And there are still another $750 million to complete the projects. For example, in Quebec, the PRECO programs account for several million, $450 million for Quebec. Not all of the programs have been approved thus far. We're trying to determine what the situation is, because municipalities are going to be submitting projects via Quebec. In the first phases when projects are being looked at, if they're chosen but not yet approved 100%, or at least the work has begun, if we notice at some point in time that the province or the municipality are not in a position to invest the necessary funds to be partners in accordance with the pre-established percentages, 50% of the quarter or the third, depending on the rules, I understand that the money becomes available once again. But does it become available again to that province, for that province, where the project unfortunately didn't fly, or are the funds available nationwide in the broader picture?
Available to the province that it wasn't expended. So yes, if, for example, if in Quebec a project falls off for a whole bunch of reasons, it could be any reason, the money would be available to be reallocated within Quebec. However, we're making all the efforts to commit all the money and get the projects all started and hopefully completed, because this is a time-limited program. So the timely delivery of the programs are going to be very important, and we count on our partners to make sure that this is done.
In another context, I don't know if you're directly involved. You mentioned this earlier. I think it's Madame Doré who spoke of this. It's the whole issue of the advertising or the announcement of the projects. We got a request from Privy Council for $4 million for the Prime Minister for promotion, or at least to inform the public about where the monies under the action plan are being spent, whereas you told us at the beginning of the meeting, and we saw this in other information as well, that the departments already have funds for communication to inform the population with regard to the way this money is being expended. So I'm somewhat stumped by the $4 million requested by PCO. So could you enlighten us in this regard? First of all, the partner department in a project, is it the one that communicates it, that does the advertising? Mr. Nadeau, please wrap up. And does the Prime Minister intervene afterwards? Could you explain this to me, please? As I explained, departments are responsible for undertaking the communications activities with regard to the initiatives they're responsible for. With regard to the advertising activity itself, and by that I mean advertising on radio, TV, advertising proper, this is coordinated in such a way that the departments use an advertising fund to commit funding based on the various initiatives, targeted initiatives. And in the context of the horizontal activities, and I underscored this in my opening statement, there is also a coordination activity which is undertaken by PCO for communication purposes, and it's really coordination work so as to ensure that when there are initiatives involving several departments, the communications are coordinated. And when my colleague, Mr. Kennedy, appeared with me in November, I believe that we also had a discussion about the website. So instead of having in all departments identification of the locales of activities and projects, PCO devised a site that includes all of this in order than having it split up among the various departments. So the coordination element requires funding and expenditures on the part of PCO for communication, not advertising, but communication, and the coordination of these communication activities. So these funds are targeted at coordination and the integration of the communications activities, especially as far as websites are concerned. Thank you.
8 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My first question is for Madame Doré. When you talk about the communications plan between departments, PCO, the government, is it to standardize things? Is it to have a global overall vision in order to avoid that one department might have a communication strategy using different logos? Is it to ensure some consistency? There are several reasons why we undertake coordination activities, not myself, but PCO, with regard to other departments. On the one hand, it is to reduce overlap and duplication. As I mentioned, instead of having to visit several websites and glean information that would be difficult to identify, PCO in this case has devised a website for all of the data, all of the information. It's all integrated there, so a citizen, a business person, an association does not have to sift through all the various websites of the departments in order to try to find which programs, which initiatives might suit them. So there's a website that was devised and that is maintained in order to support and assist citizens, help them find their way and discover the opportunities they might have to benefit from the Economic Action Plan. There is also coordination that is done to ensure that the communications are consistent and so that Canadians can have access to information rapidly. There were two main elements to the coordination. One was to ensure that the projects and initiatives are launched quickly, and secondly, that Canadians be aware of these initiatives. And in fact, there's a third mechanism, and you underscored it yourself. It is to ensure that the image, the federal image and identity are respected in all communications activities. And indeed, it is a coordination role that comes under PCO, Privy Council, for initiatives that are pan-governmental, but more particularly those of Treasury Board, so that the use of the official symbols is respected. So if I understand correctly, you could suggest to some departments to modify their presentations in order to ensure consistency. Yes, and I would say that because the initiatives were devised quickly, we wanted people to concentrate on delivery of service, delivery itself, and the setting up of these initiatives. The communications activities were coordinated, as Mr. Kennedy told you. He mentioned a guide for the presentation of material, etc. All of this was done precisely in order to facilitate this and to speed the communication of this material up, because given the economic circumstances, it was in everyone's interest to concentrate our efforts on the initiatives and their rollout and to ensure that communication was available to all. Thank you very much. My next question. You talked about the life cycle of projects. In Quebec, we know that we work closely with the government of Quebec. When a municipality or a promoter or a developer presents a funding application, it presents it to the government of Quebec. Explain to me the process after that. Yes, with pleasure. There are two ways by which projects are submitted in Canada from Quebec. The first method is the one I mentioned. It was the PRECO project for water mains in the municipalities. We are sharing in the cost of that program $700 million. It's a 50-50 split, 50% Canada, 50% Quebec. The application forms are submitted to Quebec, that reviews them, that looks at the project and evaluates it. Once Quebec's work is done, it submits its conclusions to Canada in order for Canada to accept or reject the project as well, after which Quebec becomes the maître d'œuvre, the overseer of the project, and it signs the agreement with the municipality and supplies the funding and ensures that there is a follow-up with the municipality as well. The other mechanism for Quebec, for the stimulus fund, Quebec can propose projects itself, and generally it proposes projects in three categories. Transportation projects, mainly for roads and highways in Quebec, the infrastructure element. Cultural projects, there are several cultural projects that are subsidized under the stimulus fund, and programs with the municipalities for other types of activities, other things than water main construction. Quebec supplies the forms for funding applications. It's one page, and Canada reviews these very quickly, and if Canada and Quebec are in agreement on the project is added underneath the agreement we have with Quebec. And as I indicated, Quebec is responsible for these projects as well. In the life cycle of these projects, when the promoters or the municipalities present their first invoice, the project has begun, the foundations are there. After X number of days, the promoter, the developer sends the invoice to Quebec, and Quebec forwards it to Canada, or are copies sent to both? Do we reimburse Quebec, or how does that happen? How does it work? What's the process? The municipality submits its invoices to the province of Quebec that reviews them. Quebec and every province under the stimulus fund does its report in the context of this system for the stimulus fund. For every single project, there's an updating mechanism with regard to the funds expended by Canada. More than 95% of projects are covered by agreements with the provinces, and the majority of the funds were provided by Canada to the province in all these cases. But the process is Canada sends the money to the province, and the province gives the money to the promoter, to the municipality. Every 30 days, do they come forward with an invoice if a project lasts 6 to 8 months, or is it just 2 or 3 times? Yes? No, that's exactly it.
Because it was a new program, new system, people did their reports and their claims. It took us some back and forth to sort of say, well, you might have made a mistake here, or you have the project starting at this date, but you have the tender after that. So we've been going through that, and it's understandable with a new program and a new system. So we've worked very closely with all the provinces and territories to process that first report that was made in September. And we now have the second round that are just coming in now, and we'll process that. So once we have a clean report and claim, then we'll process the funds to the province within 30 days. Merci.
Mr. Martin, for 8 minutes.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you, guests, for being here. I guess the reason that you're here and not the Parliamentary Budget Officer, who we expected to be here, is that he's now said that he's been given a bunch more information that he has to process and digest before he can bring back any meaningful report to our committee. So I want to talk a bit about that, the way the Parliamentary Budget Officer is getting the information about the infrastructure. As the Deputy Minister for Infrastructure, has anybody ever spoken to you from Cabinet or from the government about how and when you would release information to the Budget Officer and in what form it might take?
No. But I would like this opportunity to explain what the Parliamentary Budget Officer has received and why he received what he received at the time we gave it to him.
I'd like to hear that too, but in the context of answering, can you explain who thought it was a good idea to give him 4,700 loose pages when he asked for information when it was available electronically? I'd like you to explain why you would have thought that would be helpful and not mischief.
Madam Chairman, Parliamentary Budget Officer asked for data on 3,000 projects. If you assume that each project is 1 page, that adds up to 3,000. It turned out that it is more than that. So we have provided him in paper copy under the understanding that we treated him as the same way as we have been directed for the parliamentary returns that we get from the Parliament. We have provided the written copies of these documentations to Parliament. So when the Parliamentary Budget Officer has asked us, we provided him paper copy. Then we have been told by the Budget Officer that he wanted the electronic documents. Our staff worked for 3 days. I'm not exactly sure if I can explain the electronic arrangement, but put the information into a CD format, and we delivered it to him within 3 days. It took us 3 days to put the documentation on CD.
Does your office always work in both official languages?
Yes, depends on, we work on the language of work.
Why is the language of work English in all of these contracts?
The information, Madam Chairman, we have received were application data. We inputted the application data and the language that it came in. If the applicants, the province, have provided the data in English, it is entered into database in English. If it is provided in French, it is entered into database in French. We work on both languages.
The reason I asked is it caused us a great deal of inconvenience when we got the electronic copy in one language only. It's resulted in that none of us could, in fact, look at it. We couldn't circulate it. It did us no good at all. It's been part of the frustration of this committee that we can't seem to get the information that we want when we want it. Now, I understand if you're saying it's entered into the database in the language in which you receive it, then that document, I guess, has both languages, but it's not translated every piece is not in both languages, so I understand that. I have to move on because I'm
not taking your time. I would like the parliamentary, Madame Baltuchulo to explain to us what translation would cost. And that way, I'm not taking your time at all. So if she can explain that, then you can continue with your line of questioning. That way, we have cleared that out of our, we have cleared the air on it. Okay?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The committee clerk has contacted us after we provided the documents, and the honourable member is correct. It is some in French, some in English, because that's the language that's received. The clerk asked us whether we can translate this and what would be the costs. We contacted Public Works and Government Services, and we have an estimate of $230,000, and it will take 2 to 3 months to translate 500,000 words. This is the numbers we were given. And we transmitted this information to the committee's clerk. We haven't heard back from him whether the committee actually would like us to translate this documentation. We looked at more efficient ways of doing it, like dividing up the pieces and contracting it all at once, but then we have to make sure that there's consistency in language, and so that's what we have done, and we're awaiting direction from the committee. Should the committee ask us to translate it, we would be tendering this contract of $250,000. Thank you.
Your line of question, Mr. Martin?
okay. Thank you. I doubt we'll ask you to do that. That sounds crazy. But I noticed that a lot of the infrastructure, I think I know why there's a lot more road infrastructure. There's kind of a Huey Long kind of a mentality that the more projects you have, the more signs you can put up. And filling potholes is a very populous thing to do. But my question, I see that the province of Ontario has a lot more smaller projects, a lot more projects adding, I know the dollar figure is on a per capita basis, but there's a lot of small projects. There's 1,721 projects in total. But my question is, and I understand that because you get to put a sign up on each one, I think is the reasoning. My question is, though, the federal contribution and the provincial contribution, in most provinces they're almost equal. They're almost exactly the same. In Ontario, the federal contribution is $200 million higher than the provincial contribution. I'm going to leave that as a question for, I hope you can answer it at the end of my comments. But my last question that I want to ask is, from a communications point of view, is there any consideration of contracting out a new word mark for the Government of Canada in terms of the federal identification? I ask this because the word mark that we're all used to has been compromised to where people don't see a great nation when they see that word mark now. They see the sponsorship scandal. They see Chuck Guite. They see Beryl Wiseman. They see all these sleazy characters ruining the good name of our country. Is it part of the plan to design a new word mark for Canada as the main label, the main logo for the country? Those two questions probably use up my time.
Madame Doré has to leave.
Perhaps I can answer the second question. There is no intent to redo or rethink the Canada word mark. The Canada brand is known around the world. Yes, there were some incidences on the sponsorship area, but by and large, the Government of Canada and the Canada brand is a very solid brand. The word mark is Canada with the flag on top. It's very hard to rebrand a country by changing the name of the country and the flag. So I would say the word mark is here to stay.
Do you have a question for Madame Baltuchulo? Yes, okay. Yes, yeah, thank you very much for being here. And we'll see you next time with the Minister.
The other question regarding the disproportionate.
Just for clarification, I understand that you're asking why about why in Ontario the provincial contribution is less than the federal contribution, the $200 million.
Less.
That one is we have a contribution agreement with the City of Toronto. So the agreement is between the federal government and the city. So it counts towards Ontario's share. However, it's not cost shared with the province. If you would like, my colleague can give you a little bit of elaboration on that.
Well,
Do you want the elaboration? You have the time.
well, actually, no, I think I can understand that. My last question would be then, there's a bunch of projects you say that don't show up in the statistics yet that have, maybe there's been no invoices. I thought I overheard you to say there are projects that are still to be reported. Now, is this the information you've given to the Parliamentary Budget Officer last night?
The information that you have that we gave the committee is the same we gave the Parliamentary Budget Officer at the end of October. Because he asked for claims data in September and we didn't have claims yet, we couldn't respond to his request. So at the end of October, we gave him as a first tranche all the application data as of September 22nd. So this information here is based on it's information from the application of the approved projects under the stimulus fund as of September 22nd. What we since have provided to the Parliamentary Budget Officer is two things. Last week, we met with his office and gave him a very detailed technical briefing on the program, walked him through the whole program, how it works, and showed him how it operates. And then we've now provided them with the claims information he requested in September, which was the first round of claims information. And that covers about 1,750 projects. So that was information that was provided to us in late August and the middle of September. Some of it would have been collected early in July, middle of July. So it represents the state of projects from, I'd say, July to about mid-August. Okay? And that's the information we just gave him and that he will now go through. And that covers about 1,750 projects. We now are getting to the second round of claims. Remember, they have to do it quarterly. Before, they would do it once a year. This program every quarter, and the next quarter was November. So we're now just going through the next round of reporting and claims from all the provinces.
Is it possible for the committee for you to table that for the committee so that that's the progress report that you're giving the Parliamentary Budget Officer so that we can have a look at it, because that's the crux of our study as to what monies have really flown out. And you explained to us the process, you've explained to us the advances. All we need to know is, yes, there are certain projects that have not put in their claims, but whatever has put in the claims, let's put it to rest and say, here is what the money has gone out, so nobody starts quibbling over it. Okay?
Yes, just again, two things to remember with that information. It gives you a snapshot of projects in July and August.
Fair enough.
The second thing is you have the same issue about language. Again, we're managing the program however the proponent has dealt with their application. So in Ontario, if we had French or English applications, that's the language of the claims and the reporting as well. So it won't be translated.
If you could give it to us within a week, what we will do is what we did for the previous one. Instead of giving the whole report, we will just make a summary of it, translate it ourselves, and give it to the committee members. Yes, Mr. Holder?
If I may, could I ask through you the size of that report? I just want to kind of get my sense of that, please.
What's the size of the report, Mr. Forster?
I don't know offhand. I'll find out and maybe I can come back to you on it.
The reason I ask that, Madam Chair, is just simply that we are probably the most significantly well-read committee, I think, on the Hill, insofar as we ask for more reports than probably all others combined. And I'm somewhat
you come
mindful
to your
of that.
time. I have to
That
go
is not a time question. That was just a
but
comment.
that's it. That's not even a point of order. Madame Foote.
No, you're right.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I thank Madam Bachelulia and Mr. Forster for being here. The question, I guess, I'm just seeing some kind of discrepancy, and you're suggesting here, in terms of the claims being approved, Infrastructure Canada pays claims within 30 days, and I'm looking at the schematic here, which again says final claims paid within 30 days. Now, I guess I want to ask you about a situation that I'm aware of through the National Trails Coalition. And I'm sure you're familiar with that program. And it was funding that was approved. I think it was in the vicinity of $270,000 for bridge and culvert replacements. And the way the funding worked was that it would be given in installments, so 50%, then 20, 20, and 10. And the project is now completed, this particular project, but they're being told that the 10% is being held back until May of 2010. And there was nothing in the application process to indicate that they would have to wait until that time frame for that 10% to be paid out. In fact, they just assumed that once their project was completed, that they would, in fact, when their invoices were submitted, that they would be paid back for that. But now they're being told that they have to wait until the entire country's projects are audited. So 7 months from now, like their project's completed, but they're being told that they will not get that 10%, which amounts to about $16,000 for small contractors, which is a lot of money when you're talking rural Canada. So my question is the discrepancy here in that 10%. Why is that 10% being held back until all of these projects are completed?
The National Trails program runs a bit differently than this schematic. It runs through one agreement with the coalition. So there's one contribution agreement. The coalition then goes out and selects the projects, approves the projects, and provides the funding to the local groups who are actually doing the work. Under the Trails Coalition program, we provided 50% of the funding for this. It's a $25 million program, so we provided $12.5 million, I think it was in May or June, to the coalition that allows them to get going and get work going. What you're referring to would be 10% holdback on the program. So we will still contribute to the coalition. What we do is, and this is not uncommon in most contribution programs, there's a holdback of 10%. Once the coalition completes the program, files the necessary reports, yes, here's what we did with your money, here's the projects that were done, and closes the book on the program, we'll release the final 10% for the program. They could, if they wish, I believe, and I would have to check, but if they want to use the money that we've been providing them all along to finish off projects as they're completed, that's their call. We'll hold back, as I said, 10% at the end until they finish the program.
Until they finish the entire program. So
That's
that
right.
means you can have, in provinces, you can have a project completed, but until the projects are completed throughout the entire country, then they won't get the outstanding amount.
Yeah, we can look at that, but
Please.
and see if there's a way we can help them, and particularly with specific projects that have finished, they can pay those off, even though at a program level, we might be holding back a little bit.
This one has been completed since October the 20th, and if you're suggesting until May 2010,
Right.
then you're going to have small contractors who are being out significant amounts of money for them. I think, Madam Hall-Finley, you have a question that you'd like to, I'll share.
Thank you very much. You mentioned that 2,000 projects have been started. The information that we've received from various municipal representatives is that, in fact, of over 3,000 that have been announced, only about 1,000 have been started. Can you please provide to us evidence of the ones that have been started? Again, these are questions we've been asking, but we just don't get information. It's not on the website. We're only getting figures about what's been announced. We would really like some hard figures and examples of what is actually being started. So if you can provide that to us. And in terms of time frame, because we are running out of time, could you give me an idea of when you could provide that information?
Yeah. Like us to give you a breakdown by province, what has started?
Of projects that have actually been started.
Right, underway.
Yeah, and then the added piece to that. So thank you. That would be great in both languages, if that's possible. And also jobs created. We keep hearing the Building Canada Fund site has jobs, but the stimulus fund has no information about jobs being created. We have advertising saying creating jobs, but if you can provide specific numbers of jobs created from the reports that you've had for the municipalities and provinces, also within the same time frame, that would be very helpful.
Thank you. If you give a very quick response.
Okay, we were actually ready to give the honourable member breakdown per fund or per program, which, as of our updates,
September,
what is underway.
Okay.
We would be happy to do it right now. The second thing is that in terms of jobs, I'm sure the committee is well aware that the government reports on jobs created on a macro level, on government-wide. Government has provided 3 updates in the Parliament, and then the next one is coming in December, where the job numbers will be presented. However, as projects are on the ground, we are getting information from some of the proponents as to how many jobs have been created. They are anecdotal. Important to note that Canadian Federation of Municipalities has said that with $1 billion injection into the economy, it creates 11,000 jobs. As well, our colleagues in Finance Canada run models in terms of job creation. So I do not wish to promise anything I can't give to the committee. We can give you anecdotes. We can give them to you right now as to what people report.
No,
but
the
I can't
anecdotes
give...
we have received from the witnesses, what we would like, I think Madam Hall-Finley has asked for, is startups. If you could give us startups, I'm not going to take anybody else's time on that. Thank you. Monsieur Nadeau.
Merci, Madame.
Yes.
I think they were ready to give us those right now.
They have figures right now? Okay, so you don't mind taking... Okay, I'll take everybody's time then. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Merci. I don't want you complaining you didn't get your time to ask questions. Okay.
Okay.
Madame, yeah, we have. Do you have a hard copy, or are you can?
No, I mean we can come back to you with something in writing. But generally speaking, again, remember under the budget, our 2 challenges was to speed up Building Canada and do the stimulus. So combined across all our programs, there's 2,500 projects underway across the country as of the reports we've received from provinces and territories. And we can break those down by the program if you wish and provide that to you later. We don't, back to the jobs question, we do not track jobs by project because it's just the data you get is very inconsistent and unreliable and you have no way of verifying it. And I think if you look at some of the examples in the U.S. where they're doing self-reporting of jobs created, it's causing a lot of difficulties and inconsistencies, and you know, you get one project where they bought 9 boots and it created 9 jobs. So it's just the value of sort of the self-reporting.
So the clarification that you can give us is that between the Building Canada Fund and the stimulus infrastructure stimulus package, 2,500 projects have started. Is that what you are telling us? Underway.
So under.
Okay, so they need a breakdown of the 2 programs, and that you would be able to supply to us. Is that okay, Mr. Martin? That's what they said. Unless they have it right in front of them.
If we'd all just stop
okay,
talking
they can read it for us then. Fair enough. That will save us a lot of time and effort. Go ahead. Read it for us.
So under the stimulus fund, and again, this is as reported by provinces and territories earlier this fall. Sorry.
Reading out the numbers doesn't actually help us. We wanted
I'm happy
list of the
they will provide it to us visually as well. They will give it to us. They're just letting us have the figures now. Okay.
We'll read and then we'll provide the documents.
Is that okay?
We're in your hands. However you would like it, we'll provide it.
Good. I think the committee would like to hear the figures, and then the committee would like the hard copy. Thank you.
So approximately 2,500 projects are underway. So you got me thinking jobs now. Stimulus, it's around 1,250. Major infrastructure of Building Canada, about 20. The communities component of Building Canada, remember this is for these small communities under 100,000 people. Between that and the top-up money, remember the budget added $500 million to that program, We have about 900 projects underway. On the National Trails Coalition, over 360 projects underway across the country. So together that adds up to about 2,500, over 2,500. But we'll provide it if you wish in writing.
Good, thank you. We now go to Monsieur Nadeau. 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to know, in terms of criteria, the issue of X dollars invested per capita, is that the way we've always done this? We've always worked in the area of infrastructure projects in Canada? Could you please repeat the question? Yes. We're talking investment here, investment of funds per capita. Has that always been the way in which we've functioned in Canada? Per capita funding, the principle itself. Generally speaking, it's true, but there are exceptions. For example, the basic funding in the 2007 budget, most of the Building Canada funding was split up on a per capita basis. That's how the distribution was made. But in the plan, there's a fund of $25 million per year for 5 years, and every province and territory receives exactly the same amount. That's the basis that helps the northern regions and the smaller provinces. But generally speaking, it is on a per capita basis. That being said, the numbers that we have are for the projects that are underway, that are being carried out. With regard to jobs, because in the end that's what we want. We want to invest properly in projects for society, but this attempt to get things going again, a very laudable attempt, is it going to allow us to combat in an effective and efficient way the jobless situation? Are we going to be helping people who lost their job or were in trouble financially? Is it going to allow them to get their jobs back?
Unemployed is absolutely critical. And one of the best ways the economists and governments around the world have believed that is to actually stimulate the economy and create employment activity is through infrastructure projects. As I mentioned before, the overall jobs numbers are reported to Parliament on a macro level on the all economic stimulus package, not only on infrastructure. However, as we're going through, our partners are giving us numbers in terms of job creation. Like you asked about Quebec, in the Lac Saint-Jean area, the Véloroute de Bluet, the province is reporting that it created 160 jobs working on that particular project. So we are getting anecdotal information around the jobs, but the job numbers overall is reported across the whole economy. So we're hoping that these investments are helping people on the ground and employing many Canadians. And again, these numbers are getting supported by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities.
D'accord. Maintenant, la corrélation.
Fine, but the correlation, money invested, projects, and jobs created, is it a ratio that is solid? Is the main objective the jobs issue or the number of projects that are launched? Or is one independent of the other with regard to the criteria? For us, the number of jobs is not a criteria for choosing programs. The aim of the program is to accelerate projects and construction, etc., throughout the country. So there are ways economic means to do analyses and modeling to predict the number of jobs that will be created by an investment in construction, for example. But for us, the purpose of the program is to accelerate construction projects and stimulate the economy. And the stimulus funding is with construction. That's its basis. Thank you. 4 or 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, and I would like to thank our guests quite sincerely for your dedication and commitment. I'm not sure that as I reflect on the kind of effort that has been required to make all of these projects work and the organization basically from the ground up, from a zero base, what you've done has been absolutely unprecedented, and I think all of us at the committee need to acknowledge the tremendous effort of your department, and we'd like to say thank you for that. Kind of reflecting on a comment I was making, not as a point of order, but as a comment about when you were asked for a further report. It seems to me that if I was a guest of this committee, I would have some fear and trepidation because the significant amount of work that seems to come out as a result of this after the fact is quite staggering in terms of reporting. And my only concern ever, and I mean this very sincerely, is that you're also able to get, while we have a great need to know, and I respect our need to know, you have to get on with your work as well. And I would simply ask if, never to be shy, if in fact there's a simpler way to do it, I know that we would accept that accordingly. A few brief questions, if I might, please. Much has been asked about the issue of the per capita funding, whether as a dollar amount. I just heard most recently in terms of jobs, and I appreciate your response. But the per capita funding, is it based as a dollar amount or based on number of projects when they're allocated per province?
It's a dollar amount.
Okay, and that makes sense. So there's certainly then a fairness about it across all provinces. Did any of the provinces turn any of the dollars down?
Not so far.
Not so far.
We still have some work to do, though.
Okay. And I thought I heard the point that you made that the provinces get to, if there are some projects that may not be completed, what I heard you say, and please just confirm if that is correct, that the provinces get to reinvest in their province so that no province is disadvantaged as a result of a specific project not being completed.
It's not the government's intention to disadvantage any province.
Thank you. I heard another reference from member opposite of and just so I don't kind of feel like I'm besmirching any party in broad terms, but I heard my colleague from the NDP talk about a Huey Longish approach to things. I thought that was kind of a curious term. I'd rather Canadianize the terms, and I didn't get a sense he was supporting road work, but I don't care which project. I don't think there's bad projects per se, because I want to come back, if I can, to the approval process. Tell me, was it the federal government alone who chose the projects to be determined? And I'm not being silly when I ask the question, but I'm trying to make a point here amongst our committees. Was it just the federal government that made those decisions with respect to which projects were determined?
No. This is, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, and we have been stressing this very important point, it is federal government, along with our partners, with the provinces, with municipalities. The projects are selected and approved. This is important for a number of reasons. One, it allows for joint decision-making, but also it is important that the money that will go to the projects on the ground where the need is, municipalities and provinces identify where the need is, and we work with them to finalize these projects. John, do you want to add any more on the process?
No, I think you've hit the main points, that these projects, they may be provincial, they may be municipal. If they're municipal, they're approved by their city council or their mayor. If they're provincial, they're approved by the provincial government. They're jointly funded by all three levels. We're all putting money into this. And the reality is actually, and pardon me for saying this, but if we had looked back in February and said, gee, do you think by August we could get 13 jurisdictions all to sign contribution agreements with the federal government, all agree to match dollar for dollar the Fed, in some cases $2 for one, what the federal government is putting in, and collectively, jointly, between 3 levels of government, sit down and approve over 3,000 projects in about 7 months, I think people would have laughed at us. And
Mr. Forster, is there any last question then? I've got a very quick one. Is there any example in the history of Canada where that kind of level of cooperation, with that kind of unprecedented spending, with that kind of number of projects that have been asked to be undertaken, is there anything in your recollection or your knowledge of Canadian history, and I can take us right back to 1867, that would suggest this kind of unprecedented projects?
well, I'll bow to your expertise on history, yes,
Perfect.
but certainly in terms of our recent and modern-day infrastructure programs, there isn't a similar example I can think of.
Well, thank you for your hard work.
Thank you
Thank you,
very
Chair.
much. We now go to Madame Foote for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I've noticed when I've looked at the projects that have been approved that a significant number of them are what you would call renewal projects versus new construction. I wonder if you could elaborate on that for me.
Absolutely, because renewal projects take, because we have a 2-year time frame for this project, for this program, a lot of renewal applications did come in because they can actually be physically finished within one construction season or even less than that. For example, road resurfacing is very fast to do. It is very much needed, but it is much easier project to do. So if something is from scratch, like completely new building or in addition to a building, those are more onerous projects, and so probably there's less of them because of just dependent on construction.
Okay, so that would have been a topic for discussion with the provinces and municipalities and in terms of time frame, because obviously concerns have been expressed by the Federation of Municipalities with respect to the March 31st, 2011 deadline. And there's some concern in the smaller municipalities, in fact, that they may not get the project finished if it hasn't already been in the mix by the deadline that's been stipulated. And the fear now, of course, is that there are going to be municipalities who may have benefited from this program who will now not go forward because the understanding is it is not completed by the deadline, then the municipality has to absorb the cost, the total cost of the project on a go-forward basis. The cost of the project that's left to be finished. So obviously that's an issue for municipalities. So I guess my question is, was that part of the thinking that went into the stimulus package that we would focus on renewal projects versus new builds?
Yes, definitely, because the other thing you got to remember, you look at stimulus in the context of the whole suite of programs we offer. And the Building Canada programs, for example, strictly focus on new construction. We don't do rehabilitation repair work. So stimulus, again, as Yaprak mentioned, because it's a very short-term program, allowing rehabilitation repair work made sense, not just for the time frame of the funding we have, but also it makes good asset management sense. So I'm investing in repairing and rehabilitation of my asset, and I'm prolonging the life of that asset. So maybe I don't need to replace my building, my bridge, for another 20 years by doing that work now. So we certainly encourage the repair and rehab, but the program was open. If you had a new building or a new arena, but you could still build it in the 2-year time frame, and every application, the proponent attested to the fact that they believed that this project could be built. Now we'll monitor them as we go.
In looking at the expenditures here, the project costs and the amounts that have been totaled here, I'm assuming that's what you anticipate spending by the end of March 31st, 2011. Like, if some of these projects can't be completed, then that funding will lapse, obviously.
At the moment, the funding runs until March 31st, 2011. So we'll pay all our share of all the costs incurred right up to 11/59 on March 31st, 2011. In our agreements with provinces and municipality, everyone's agreed that if it's not finished, they will finish the project and cover the costs that are left to do so. But we'll certainly be paying every one of our share.
Did you want to share?
I'd rather you have 10 seconds. You have actually 40
10
seconds. 40 seconds.
Understand that under the contribution agreements, you're supposed to get quarterly progress reports on specifically job creation from municipalities and provinces. That's what we understand. Can you, if you've had received none so far, you're both shaking your head, so you haven't received any?
You might want to see what's in that.
Right. On our claims and reports, we are not requiring them to post the job creation numbers by project. It is not what they report on. They report on tender date, contract date, when did you start construction, costs incurred to date, what our share of those costs
Isn't it
are.
part of the contribution agreement that there's a specific...
To report on jobs, no.
Section 6 should be.
And as I mentioned earlier in the example I gave of some of the problems you have with self-reporting of jobs, the data you get can be quite challenging.
Thank you. Well, that is a question you can put down. Mr. Brown, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the first question I have is, I think one of the parts of the infrastructure program that some may find challenging is the deadline, the March 31st deadline, 2011. A lot of the programs have to have their project completions done by. What type of feedback are you getting on that, and what are you doing to speed up approvals to make that finish date more realistic?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The deadline, the government has been very clear about the March 2011 deadline, and that's the deadline we're working towards. The quarterly reports that we're getting from the provinces is one of the key tools that we're utilizing, and we will be utilizing in the months to come. Basically, we are going to check up on the status of each and every project and to see if there's anything we could do or our provincial partners or municipalities can do to speed them up. So it is one by one, and we're basically, that's what we're doing. And we feel that hopefully by the time the next next winter report comes in, we will have a very good sense of where the problem areas might be. So basically, we will go through each project, make sure that we are doing our best to get everything expedited within our capacity. That being said, however, infrastructure projects are dependent on our partners, municipalities, the provinces. They have to make, they're responsible for actually making these things happen on the ground.
There's been some suggestions that infrastructure stimulus funding favors government ridings, and I thought it might be helpful for you to share where the project suggestions originate from primarily. Are they primarily from what level of government do the submissions come from? And do you have any concerns that there's been any political interference in the process?
I cannot comment on a political question. However, we can explain to you how the process runs. The project applications do come from all over, all across different proponents. It could be through the province, it could be through the municipality. Municipalities can get it from specific proponents. So there's a large list of applications that come through. Then it is reviewed by federal and provincial officials. At the federal level, we have different types of controls. An assistant deputy minister level committee reviews them, and then the recommendations are made. We ensure that no project gets put forward that doesn't meet the terms and conditions of a program.
Mm-hmm. I think it's fair to say that a lot of these projects are coming from submissions from municipal governments. And what measures do you have to mark the progress of these projects? Do you have performance indicators? And how often are we getting updates from municipal governments on the status of these projects?
Well, as I mentioned, our agreements with each province and territory, they're required as a minimum to report quarterly. Our previous programs, they do it once a year. So in this program, Because of the time sensitivity, they're reporting every quarter on all the projects. And what they're telling us is the project underway? What was the tender date? What was the contract date? Has the project construction on the ground started, etc. So we monitor those against what the start date in their application. So if projects are slipping, we'll sit down with the province and say, okay, that one was going to be a tight fit to begin with. It looks like it's slipped a couple of months. Do we want to keep it in and still push, and how can we get it to make sure it's done?
I understand that the agreement is with the provinces for quarterly reports, but is there a separate expectation that municipalities will abide by that expectation of quarterly reports?
Our reports come through the province, but the province has its own, like again, our money goes to you as the province, and then you distribute it to municipal governments. So you have your own agreement with the municipalities. You may have requested more frequent reporting from them, but in terms of the federal government with the provinces and territories, it's quarterly.
I would like, I was requested by Mr. Martin if he could get a quick question in. The time is up. I'd like them to wrap up. And so would the committee give Mr. Martin a minute? Yes? You can, no, the Conservative time is up. The Liberal time is next, but we are not taking any time. Mr. Martin would like a minute. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Yeah.
One very, well, thank
quick
you.
Question?
Thank you to the committee for that permission.
Yes.
One very brief and specific question. Given that the federal government doesn't distribute funding until invoices are received, as I understand the explanation, how many invoices has the federal government received, and what is the total dollar figure to date?
Well, as I mentioned, the first round of that reporting was in August and September, and that's what we're just processing and finishing off now, so I can't give you a dollar figure to it. But I know that when you print out the claims and reports, it's, I don't know, it's over 1,700 projects that have been reported on, but that would have been information as of July and August. So,
but are those actually invoices? Are they actually invoices?
Yeah, it's an online system. So you go in at each project and you complete for each one of the projects the start dates, the tender dates, all that information, costs incurred to date, and whether the federal share and the provincial share. So on each project they report on that if they wish to. We have tons of projects that have started, and we have some that have even finished where we don't have claims yet. So I may not get a claim for something that was finished in September until February. They're not, you know, they'll file a claim when they're ready to. So we have at least 500 projects, for example, we know that are underway and well advanced where we don't have a claim for costs yet. But once they bill us, we'll be happy to pay for it.
I think the question was very clear. How many invoices have you received? If you have not received anything, and I understand from you that there were 50 projects that were completed, but you haven't received any invoices. So if you haven't received invoices, and you can take a look at it, and if you could respond to the committee, because I think that's a concern of the committee. I'd like to thank you. Yes, Ms.
Sorry, Madam Chairman. I just want to make sure that we don't promise something we can't deliver in the time frame. So it's very important for us to provide the committee with accurate information. So we can't provide you draft numbers or the data with problems. What we will do is we'll look through everything that we gave to the parliamentary budget officer, try and summarize it in a way so that it would be helpful to the committee, because I think that's also another many pages.
If it takes too long to summarize, the analyst tells me they'll be able to summarize it for us. So I'd
we
rather
will
keep
provide
your
it.
time.
I just would like some flexibility in terms of timing and when we can provide you all of these things, because I'm not exactly sure. I have to check with our team.
Okay, so the progress report that you've given to the budget officer has numbers or dollar amounts in it that you are not comfortable with? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
No. The documents, the actual applications came from the provinces,
Right.
and it was the first time they were using the electronic method.
Yes.
We found that there were issues with the data that was inputted.
So why
There
don't
were
you put the
discrepancies,
disclaimer?
so we had to make sure that we cleaned it up with the provinces. We did provide the parliamentary budget officer with what we have, but our chief financial officer hasn't gone through them yet. So we have verification, internal verification that we're doing, which is important for us to do. While we would be happy to provide anything the committee wishes, we also have to run this program and make sure that all of the Financial Administration Act requirements are adhered to. So that's what we're doing. So if you would like, we would provide you what we provided to the Parliamentary Budget Officer
With a
or
disclaimer.
a version of
Yeah,
it.
with a disclaimer saying we do not, these figures have not been verified, and therefore we will know what we are doing. We have to be responsible, and we know what you have been doing. Within a week that we will be able to have it, because you've already supplied it to the Parliamentary Budget Officer? Yes?
If it's exactly the same package, sure.
Yeah, sure.
That's,
and
you'll run into the same language
There
problems.
was a clarification that we wanted to figure out, and that was the 50 projects that have completed. Did they belong to the Build Canada Fund or to the stimulus package? And you can give me the answer later, just if you make a note of it. And supply us the information that you've given.
We have the information.
You have it? And the second one was, I was advised that Schedule H of the agreement states, I think 6.2, states that job creation is part of the municipality's responsibility. Is it my understanding that that's the case? If it is not the case, clarify.
It is not the case in Canada's agreement with the province. Ontario goes out then and signs its deals with all the municipalities. They may have put that in their agreement.
But the federal one doesn't have it. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
And in terms of the projects that we know are completed without having any claims information, there are about 47. Most of those are in the stimulus fund.
In the stimulus fund?
Most.
Okay. And the $33 billion that was there, how much of it has been utilized, if you can give us that information? Over the 7 years, it was supposed to be $4.7 billion per annum. If it has been utilized or drawn down, that would help us as well. And if you have any closing remarks to make?
No, thank you.
But I thank you very much. It has been grueling trying to get you here and getting all this information. But I thank you for the information you have provided and look forward to working with you in solving this issue. Thank you very much. Meeting suspended. No, you're getting your turn. Committee members, we have a motion. We have some committee business, and the first thing is the motion by Mr. Anders. Mr. Anders?
The steering committee report.
Sorry. I was told steering committee report is first. So, the steering committee report, item 6 of the steering committee report stated that the clerk be authorized to distribute to the committee members in one or other official languages. And when Madame Baltachulu explained to us the cost of $230,000 for translation and 2 to 3 months, I would like to ask the committee, do they still want the information translated? And if they do, it'll take 2 to 3 months and the information will be irrelevant by that time. So, committee members, do you wish that information be distributed to the committee without translation? No, you do not? No? So that's fine. Oui.
The Bloc's position, what we accept, is that the documents be tabled as such for utilitarian reasons, because in 3 months' time, there'll be no point in this. If we wait 3 months, there'll be no point in this. Is that it? Is that the issue?
Okay, let me give you just a little history. The 4,500 pages that the Infrastructure Canada gave to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, and Mr. Martin was right in asking the question. It should have been given electronically. And then when we spoke to Infrastructure Canada, and we had a motion before committee, they submitted to us electronic version and gave the same to the Parliamentary Budget Officer. Anyone who wants to access the information can always access it via the Parliamentary Budget Officer if they want to. It's in full, complete. So if we sit here as committee and think that this information is not being distributed without translation, they are absolutely incorrect. You can get it. The information is available. So what happened was the steering committee wanted it to be put forward to the committee. The translation, it's 5,000 pages or lines? 50,000 lines, did she say?
3,700 lines.
Okay, so she said 5,000 lines costing $230,000. It's a real onerous cost. And it will take the department 2 to 3 months. Now, we would have an option. We could ask the clerk to find out an alternate translation, if that's the case. We could. We wouldn't have to wait 2 to 3 months. We will have to figure out how long it takes. And if you wish for me to report back next meeting, I could do that. Monsieur Plamondon. Oui.
Our position as far as the Bloc is concerned is that we will make an exception here and accept that the documents be tabled solely in English, or rather in the language in which they're drafted, so as to be able to work given the usefulness of these documents. I'm really scandalized and disappointed by the proposal made from the Dean of the House of Commons. It's really a matter of principle here, bilingualism, and it's dear to me. And it's just our party that is promoting and defending the values of bilingualism and of French. And here I see Mr. Plamondon smiling, laughing, but I'm very serious here. He has just said that he would accept documents in English after 25 years here in the House, more than 25 years, defending the values of bilingualism. And look at this, Madam Chair. Look at this. This is unacceptable. It's not acceptable at all. Madam Chair, listen. I don't want to get into a debate here. The hypocrisy of the last intervention is incredible. They simply don't want us to do this study. And this is why I'm accepting this, because it's urgent that we study this. And they don't want us to study this. And they're using bilingualism. It's hypocritical. They've never been in favor of bilingualism. I was a conservative, I know. Thank you, thank you. On a point of order, Ms. Foote, on a point of order, I cannot accept what Mr. Plamondon has said about hypocrisy. There are principles here in this place. You're hypocritical. It's hypocritical. And you're a demagogue. That's not a point of order.
Okay.
And I want an apology. There should be apologies. An apology, please, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I move that the documents be tabled in whatever format that they've been tabled in for the committee.
Okay, thank you.
It's already in the steering
It is in the steering committee report, and that is where I was asking the question. Now, For committee members who really want it, and I can see that the government side does not want this report given to them in anything but the official languages, and the department first, the information that the department sent us was that they were not going to translate it for us, despite the fact that it is the department's job to translate. Then when I spoke to the deputy minister, she says, well, we can translate it, but it's going to cost $230,000. And you heard her, and she says 2 to 3 months. So if the committee members wish to have the report individually, there is a way to get it. Those that don't want to look at the report and probably have seen it already and think that bilingualism is going to stop them, there's ways of accessing it, and you can see me afterwards. Yes. Mr. Walkerton.
Madam Chair, I know that I am probably speaking about something that was maybe in camera, but there was an arrangement in our last meeting, if you recall, with regards to translation of this particular document. So if you reference our in-camera meeting of the last meeting, I would ask that you would fulfill that commitment that was made by the Chair in terms of distribution in one of the particular official languages.
What commitment? We decided to have a compromise, and the information you have received was the summary of information rolled up and given to you. And the second thing that was discussed in camera, which shouldn't be discussed here, but it's now open, that the clerk go back to the department and ask them to provide us with translation. The department has come back and told us.
If you recall the last meeting, and if I have permission of committee members to speak about the translation issue that we spoke of in camera the last meeting, do I have permission of committee members to reference material of the last meeting in camera?
No.
Actually, what was agreed was for me.
We will check the minutes, and we will get back to you. How about that? And we will see whether there has been anything.
Let's maybe delay this until there's been a reference of those minutes.
Mr. Walkerton, any committee member who wishes to access this 4,500-page can access it whichever way they want to, without this committee distributing it to them. So
there was a commitment in the last meeting by you, Madam Chair, in terms of the translation of the Quebec portions of the documents to be translated in English. It was consent from all sides.
No, I'm sorry. No, there was not.
Madam Chair, there's a motion.
There's a sorry. Okay. Sorry. Yes.
There's a motion already that I put forward suggesting that we accept the tabling of the documents as they've been presented.
Sorry, Ms. Foote, that was my error. So the motion is that we table the 4,500 document page as was given to us by Infrastructure Canada. Those in favor of the motion, what?
Distribution to the committee members?
And distribution to the committee members?
In one or the other official languages?
That's right. As tabled.
Okay. Yes.
I believe that Mr. Plamondon moved a motion, and then Mrs. Foote moved a motion. Now, if you want to clarify, I don't care which motion it is. Mr. Plamondon.
No, he never promotes. We're paying attention. Sorry, it was Ms. Foote. Okay, those in favor of the motion, please raise your hands.
But please read the motion again.
The motion is, Madame Foote moves that the report that was submitted to us from Infrastructure Canada be distributed in the format it was given to the committee.
In the language.
In the language whatever language it was given, it has bilingualism in it. Yes, the Quebec. Yes, it's both. It's in both languages actually, in terms of the Quebec portion. So. Okay, so.
Okay, do you rule that it must be done on
no,
the floor?
Yes, it's done. Yes.
Okay.
So those in favor of the motion, those opposed, and you're not putting your hand up. Tie, and I will break the tie.
Voting in favor?
We're voting in favor. Okay, the next thing I'd like the committee to note is that we had, Madame Bourgeois wanted the study of the large infrastructure projects and the procurement process, and Mr. Minto has stated that, Monsieur Plamondon, attention, Monsieur Plamondon, s'il vous plaît.
Shout, Mr. Plamondon, please.
Okay, Mr. Mento suggested that he has produced his report. He would like to be here with the committee for 2 hours, and that means that the Public Works and Government Services, which is coming on November 26th, is going to attend to the large IT projects as well as estimates on that day. So there'll be just a little switch around, and this is for information purposes that December 1st, Mr. Minto is going to be here for 2 hours. Okay?
So report is concurred?
So can we concur the report in? And then with that amendment, we concur the report. Anybody opposed to the report? Yes, you're opposed to the report?
You're making changes. I'd like to see that in written form so that we can.
We will.
Maybe repeat it. I just didn't catch.
I will. December 1st.
Yes.
We had Mr. Minto come in for the first hour, and Public Works and Government Services come for the second hour to verify that they were following the processes of Mr. Minto. But we also have Public Works and Government Services. If you have your copy of that report, of the...
I don't have it handy.
Okay, the 5th report. We have Public Works and Government Service coming on November 26th anyway to give us their analysis of how they are handling procurement of large IT projects. And I'm sure this committee has been studying this for a long time. So since Mr. Minto has just released he's the ombudsman, he's released his report, he would like to be here for 2 hours. So that's all I'm suggesting is since Public Works is already here on November 26th.
You've had a lot of commentary in addition to that. What I'm looking for is the dates. And the
November 26th, Public Works and Government Services is going to be there. And we are moving them away from December 1st to allow Mr. Minto 2 hours. That's the only change. Agreed? Mr. Walkerton.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm not necessarily agreeing with the report.
But the report is everything that the steering committee did, and we are eliminating number 6 from the report.
And that may be the case.
If you can say I don't agree with the report.
I don't think I agree with the report just because I think there's more pressing matters. But
fair enough.
That's fair enough. That's separate from my question of clarification.
You can decide the destiny of the report by a show of hands.
Okay. The clerk tells me that since you are not agreeing with the report, I'll just have to ask show of hands for people who would like to concur the report, the steering committee report, the 5th report of the steering committee, with the changes that Mr. Minto, the Ombudsman for Procurement, stay for 2 hours on December 1st instead of 1 hour, and that number 6 be eliminated. And the number 6 is translation, and which is not going to happen. So those who want to concur the report, please raise your hands. Those who do not wish the report to be concurred, please raise your hands. Okay, motion passes. Okay, now we go to a motion by Mr. Anders.
Madam Chair, I'm just going to read the motion.
Sure.
That the determination of the OGGO committee agenda be made by the entire committee during regular meetings of the committee rather than in meetings of the subcommittee on agenda and procedure, end quote. We've had a few different steering committee meetings, probably more than what I'm normally used to. Sometimes they're incredibly short notice. Other times they get moved despite short notice. Other times we've had members arrive very late. It all has to come back for the full committee anyhow. I would prefer, in terms of committees I've served on previously, that it be dealt with in public record rather than in camera during the regular committee hours. It just saves us a third committee meeting, which was happening basically every week. I leave it at that.
Anybody wants to speak, or shall I just call the vote? Let's call the vote. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your hands.
6.
All opposed?
4.
Motion carried. Any other business?